I was still holding a screwdriver when my wife told me I wasn't her daughter's father. Not metaphorically, not emotionally. She meant it legally, biologically, permanently. The kitchen window rattled as Allison slammed the door shut behind her, the sound sharp enough to make the Christmas lights on the counter flicker. She pointed a finger at my chest. Red nail polish, chipped at the edges like she'd already been clenching it too long. Emma needs her real father, she said, slow and deliberate, like a verdict. If you don't like it, divorce me. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't argue. Didn't ask her to explain. I wiped sawdust off my hands onto my jeans and looked down at the half-fixed cabinet hinge I'd been working on. Something else in this house that only functioned because I stayed late and fixed it. That was the moment it finally clicked. This wasn't a fight. This was an eviction from the living room. Emma's voice floated in, bright and careless. Mom, is Danny fixing the dollhouse roof tonight? Danny. The name she'd given me when she was 3, because Daniel sounded too grown up. Allison didn't even flinch. You already told her? I asked. She crossed her arms. Yesterday. She's excited. Tyler rented a cabin. Big tree. Snowmobiles. A real Christmas. Real. That word again. Like I'd been a placeholder, a warm body who paid bills and fixed broken things until the original owner decided to show up. I'm the one who's here, I said quietly. I'm the one who goes to school meetings. I'm the one who knows which tooth hurts when she eats ice cream. Allison's mouth tightened. Not angry, amused. You're the stepfather, she said flatly. Don't make this about you. Something inside my chest didn't break. It collapsed, slowly, inward, like an old bridge finally giving way under weight. It was never meant to carry forever. We leave on the 23rd, she continued. If you can't handle that, file the papers. Or I will. She turned away before I could answer. Already done with me. That's when I noticed the email notification on my laptop screen. Subject. Final offer. Yokohama Industrial Plant. Position. Senior Maintenance Supervisor. Relocation. Immediate. I declined it 3 times. Once for her job. Once for her parents. Once because she said, why would we ever need to leave Wisconsin? I clicked it open. From the couch, Emma padded in, wearing sock feet, dragging the little wooden dollhouse I'd rebuilt after work for 3 straight nights. Daddy Danny, she said proudly. I told Mom you fix everything. I swallowed. Hey, Penot, I said, go test the roof. She pressed down on it with both hands. It didn't move. Her grin split her face wide. I knew it. I watched her carry it back to the living room like it was something precious. Then I sat down at the kitchen table, opened the email, and finally accepted the transfer I should have taken years ago. I didn't become Emma's father in a courtroom or with a signature. I became her father on a Tuesday night in February when she was 3 years old and crying on the bathroom floor because the bath water scared her. Allison was still at work. Tyler was already gone, had been gone for almost a year by then. Technically co-parenting, practically invisible. I just moved into the house on Riverview Drive. 2 suitcases, a toolbox. That was it. Emma sat there in her pajamas, knees pulled to her chest, hair stuck to her cheeks with tears. I remember kneeling down so my eyes were level with hers and saying, hey, it's just water. It's not mad at you. She sniffed, looked at me like I had just spoken another language. You promise? She asked. I promise, I said. I'll stay right here. That night I sat on the edge of the tub while she splashed nervously. My arm draped awkwardly along the porcelain, like I was afraid the whole thing might explode if I relaxed too much. She finished her bath without screaming. Afterward, she crawled into my lap, wet hair soaking my shirt, and fell asleep with her head under my chin. Allison walked in, heels still on, purse over her shoulder, and stopped short. She doesn't usually do that. She said. I didn't answer. I just sat there holding a child who trusted me enough to sleep. That was how it started. People think stepfatherhood is about stepping in. It isn't. It's about stepping back, over and over, until there's no room left for you at all. I learned quickly where I ranked. I wasn't allowed to discipline her too firmly. Wasn't allowed to attend parent-teacher meetings alone. Wasn't allowed to sign school forms unless Allison was busy. But I was allowed to fix things. I fixed the loose stair railing when Emma tripped on it. Fixed the furnace the winter it failed at 3 in the morning. Fixed the dent in Allison's car when she clipped the mailbox and cried like it was the end of the world. I fixed lunches when Allison slept in. Fixed science projects the night before they were due. Fixed nightmares. Emma used to pat down the hallway around midnight, clutching her stuffed fox by one ear. Daddy Danny, she'd whisper, the bad dreams back. I never asked what the dream was. I just lifted the covers and let her crawl in beside me, my hand resting on her back until her breathing slowed. Tyler never knew about those nights. He didn't know Emma hated thunderstorms. Didn't know she chewed the inside of her cheek when she was nervous. Didn't know she liked her grilled cheese slightly burnt. but somehow he was still the real father. The house itself felt like borrowed space. Allison decorated it with aggressive confidence. Bright throw pillows, glass vases that collected dust, framed quotes about living your best life. My things stayed in the basement or garage. That was fine. I'd grown up in places like that. My father worked 35 years at a steel plant outside Green Bay. Same shift, same locker, same lunch pail. When he retired, they gave him a plaque and a sheet cake with his name spelled wrong. He hung the plaque in the garage anyway. Work doesn't thank you. They used to say, you just decide whether you did it right. I carried that with me into the paper mill in Eau Claire. Long hours, loud machines, the smell of pulp and oil clinging to your clothes even after you showered. I liked it. There was honesty in it. Things either ran or they didn't. I worked my way up quietly, learned every system, every weakness. By the time the Japan transfer offer came the first time, I was already training supervisors who made twice what I did. Kenji Tanaka was the one who noticed. You see problems before alarms, he said during a plant visit years ago. That is rare. I laughed it off. I didn't tell Allison about the second offer, or the third. She hated the idea of leaving Wisconsin. My parents are here, she said. My salon is here. Emma's school is here. Always Emma. Always the child I wasn't allowed to claim but was expected to sacrifice for. So I stayed, and every year I shrank a little more inside my own life. The holidays were the worst. Allison turned Christmas into a performance. Matching pajamas, curated photos, carefully staged smiles. Tyler would drift in and out of the picture depending on his mood and his girlfriend at the time. Some years he showed up late with excuses. Some years he didn't show up at all. Emma learned not to expect consistency from him. She learned it from me. When Tyler missed a pickup, Emma would sit by the window pretending not to care. I'd sit with her. Maybe next time. I'd say, she'd nod, pretending to believe me. One December, when she was 8, she asked a question that stayed with me. Daddy Danny, she said while we were putting lights on the fake tree, if people are supposed to love you, why do they leave? I didn't have an answer that wouldn't hurt her, so I told her the truth in pieces. Sometimes people don't know how to stay. I said, but that doesn't mean you weren't worth staying for. She wrapped the lights around my arm by accident and laughed. I like it better when you're here, she said. I untangled the cord slowly. So do I. I said. Allison saw my role clearly. Useful, replaceable, temporary. She never said it outright, not until that night. But she lived it every day. She corrected Emma when she called me dad in public, redirected school staff when they assumed I was her father, made jokes at dinner parties about me being the bonus parent. Everyone laughed. I smiled. That's what men like me do. But inside, something kept track. The way Allison dressed up more carefully on nights she knew Tyler would be around. The way she rolled her eyes when I talked about work. The way she talked about our house like it was hers alone. I started sleeping lighter, listening, waiting for the moment when I'd finally be told I was excess weight. And when it came, it wasn't loud. It was clean, clinical. Emma needs her real father. The night I accepted the Japan transfer, I didn't feel brave. I felt tired. Tired of proving my worth quietly. Tired of earning a place that could be taken back at any time. Tired of loving a child I was expected to disappear for, but guilt followed me across the ocean like a shadow. Every time I saw a father walking his daughter to school in Yokohama, every time I passed a toy store and thought about Emma's crooked smile, had I left her, or had I finally stopped letting someone else erase me? That question haunted me long before the courtroom ever did. And by the time the truth started to surface, by the time Allison decided I wasn't just gone but useful to destroy, I already knew one thing for certain. I wasn't fighting for a marriage. I was fighting for the right to be remembered as someone who stayed. The first thing they took from me wasn't money. It was my name. I found out the way men like me always do, quietly, accidentally. While standing in line for coffee at the VFW, two older guys I'd known for years were talking behind me, not whispering, just low enough that they thought I wouldn't hear. Shame about Danny. One said, yeah, left his wife and kid for some job overseas. Typical. I heard it was a woman, younger. Met her at work. No surprise, he always seemed too calm. Those ones usually are hiding something. I didn't turn around, didn't correct them. I paid for my coffee, nodded to the bartender, and walked out into the cold. That was the moment I realized Allison wasn't just divorcing me. She was rewriting me. By the end of that week, the story had spread through Eau Claire like grease on water. I'd abandoned my family. I'd run off to Japan. I'd chosen money over a child. Nobody asked me. Nobody called. People don't want truth. They want something that fits in a sentence. Allison gave them one. She cried at the grocery store, shook her head sadly at church, told anyone who would listen that she'd been blindsided. She just doesn't understand how someone could leave like that. I heard Sandy say later, her voice tight with discomfort, but Allison understood perfectly. She was counting on me being gone. The legal blows came fast. First, the temporary custody motion, filed without notice. She claimed Emma was emotionally distressed and that my sudden disappearance had destabilized her sense of safety. I stared at the document in Eric Jensen's office. My hands clenched so tight my knuckles ached. She's lying, I said quietly. Eric nodded. I know, but right now, it's her word, and the narrative she's already sold. What about my messages? The gifts? The flight records? Aside, we'll submit them. But family court doesn't move on facts alone. It moves on perception. That word again. Perception. I'd spent my whole life being invisible. Now I was infamous. Emma stopped responding entirely. Not even read receipts. That hurt more than the paperwork. I sent one last message. Hey, Peanut. Daddy Danny's back in town. I'm here when you're ready. Nothing. The silence pressed on my chest at night. Like, wait. I lay awake in the VFW room listening to trucks pass on Highway 53. Imagining Emma lying in her bed. Wondering why I'd left. Wondering if she'd done something wrong. That thought almost broke me. The first hearing was where I made my mistake. I thought honesty would be enough. I thought if I just explained calmly, clearly, like a man with nothing to hide, the truth would settle everything. I stood in that overheated courtroom wearing my cleanest shirt, hands folded, heart pounding, and told the judge exactly what had happened. I didn't abandon my family. I said, I accepted a job transfer after being told I wasn't welcome for Christmas. I maintained contact. I sent gifts. I returned as soon as I realized legal action was being taken. Allison cried softly beside her attorney. Not loud, controlled, strategic. Her lawyer, Langford, stood. Your Honor, the petitioner acknowledges Mr. Mercer's technical communications, he said smoothly. But intention matters. Leaving the country during a critical bonding period, especially for a non-biological parent, sends a clear message to a child. Non-biological. There it was. The knife slid in polite language. Emma was brought in briefly with the school counselor. She wouldn't look at me. Her shoulders were hunched, her hands twisted in her sleeves. Emma, the judge asked gently, can you tell me how you felt when Mr. Mercer left? She hesitated. I held my breath. Mom said he chose work. She whispered that he didn't want to be my dad anymore. Something cold washed through me. That wasn't confusion. That was programming. I looked at Allison. She didn't look back. The ruling came down like a quiet execution. Temporary custody remained with the mother. Contact to be supervised, pending further evaluation. Supervised. Like I was dangerous. Like I was something that needed to be controlled. Eric touched my arm. This isn't final. But it felt final. Walking out of that courtroom without Emma, without even a goodbye, was the lowest moment of my life. I sat in my truck afterward, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the frost, creeping along the windshield. I had never felt smaller. The town turned colder after that. People stopped making eye contact, stopped asking questions. At Hy-Vee, someone moved their cart away from mine, like I was contagious. At the mill, one of the younger supervisors pulled me aside. Hey, man, he said awkwardly. Just wanted to say, people are talking. I nodded. They always are. He hesitated. For what it's worth, I don't buy it. That almost hurt more than if he had. Sympathy is still distance. Allison escalated. She filed a motion accusing me of emotional manipulation. Claimed Emma had been pressured to call me dad. Claimed I'd confused her identity. That was when something inside me shifted. This wasn't about protection. This was about irrational. She wasn't just trying to win. She was trying to make sure I never existed in Emma's story at all. I tried to fight back early. That was my second mistake. I went to the school, asked to speak to the counselor, asked politely to correct the narrative. Mrs. Callahan looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry. Tom, she said quietly. We've been instructed not to engage without legal authorization. By whom? She didn't have to say it. Allison had gotten there first. Always first. That's how people like her win. That night, alone in the VFW room, I finally broke. Not loud, not dramatic, just a slow collapse inward. I sat on the bed, holding the small wooden fox Emma used to sleep with, the one I'd mailed from Japan and later found unopened in Allison's trunk during a supervised exchange. She'd never given it to her. I pressed it to my forehead and closed my eyes. I had done everything right. Stayed, provided, loved quietly. And I was still losing. That was the false defeat. The moment where a man realizes effort doesn't matter when someone else controls the story. And for the first time, I understood something dangerous. If I kept playing defense, I would disappear. The next week, I stopped trying to explain myself. That wasn't strategy yet. That was survival. I still showed up for work, still paid my bills, still nodded at people who suddenly couldn't meet my eyes. But inside, something had shut down. I'd always believed that if you lived clean, spoke straight, and did your job, things eventually balanced out. Family court cured me of that illusion. Truth doesn't win by itself. Truth needs teeth. The supervised visit happened on a Thursday afternoon in a beige room at a county facility that smelled like disinfectant and old carpet. A woman named Carol sat in the corner with a clipboard, pretending not to listen. Emma came in holding Allison's hand. She looked smaller, not physically. She was growing fast, but emotionally, like someone had folded her inward. "Hi, Peanut," I said softly. She smiled, but it was cautious, guarded, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed. We sat across from each other at a low table with crayons scattered between us. I didn't reach for her, didn't want to give Allison anything else to twist. We talked about school, about Clara's puppy, about how she was learning long division, normal things. But underneath it all, I could feel her watching me, measuring. Finally, she asked the question I'd been dreading. "Mom says you left because you didn't want to be my dad anymore," she said quietly. Carol's pen froze. I felt something in my chest crack, not break, crack, like ice under pressure. "That's not true," I said immediately, then stopped myself. "Slow, careful. I left because grown-ups were fighting," I said. "And sometimes, when adults fight, they say things that aren't fair." She frowned. "So you didn't choose Japan over me?" I leaned forward just enough to matter. "I chose to come back," I said. "For you." Her eyes filled. She nodded once, like she was filing that away somewhere safe. That visit lasted 45 minutes. It felt like 5 when it ended. She hugged me hard. Too hard for a kid who'd supposedly been emotionally manipulated. Carol noticed. Allison noticed too. Her jaw tightened. That hug would cost me. 2 days later, the emergency motion hit. Allegation. I had undermined the custodial parent during supervised visitation. Carol's notes were cited. Selective excerpts, carefully framed. Emma's hug had been reinterpreted as confusion. Eric stared at the filing, incredulous. "She's turning affection into evidence," I muttered. The judge didn't rule immediately. Instead, she ordered a full psychological evaluation of me, not Allison. Me. That was when I understood the trap. I wasn't just fighting a spouse. I was fighting a system that defaults against men like me, quiet, working class, non-biological. The evaluation was scheduled 3 weeks out. 3 weeks where Allison controlled the narrative. 3 weeks where Emma went home every night to a woman telling her a different version of reality. I walked out of Eric's office and sat in my truck with my hands resting uselessly in my lap. For the first time, I considered giving up, not dramatically, just letting go, letting Allison win, letting Emma grow up believing whatever was easiest. That was the true dark night. Not rage, not despair, resignation. It was a sound that stopped it, a sound I hadn't heard in years. My father's voice, clear as if he were sitting beside me. "Don't let anybody treat you like you're lucky, just to be standing in the room." I exhaled, long, slow, and something in my mind finally shifted. That night, I didn't drink, didn't pace, didn't spiral. I opened my laptop, not email, not messages, records. I started with the obvious, bank statements, timeline of withdrawals. Allison had attempted. Dates, she claimed abandonment. Dates, I was verifiably overseas for work. Then I went deeper. School emails, counselor notes, church group, sign-in sheets, where Allison had cried publicly about being left. I noticed something strange. Patterns. She repeated the same phrases everywhere, almost word for word, like she'd rehearsed. I remembered something Kenji had once said to me at the plant in Yokohama. Machines fail differently. He'd said, "People repeat." I smiled for the first time in weeks. I stopped talking, started listening. At Hy-Vee, at the mill, at church, where I sat in the back and let Allison perform her grief. People talked. They always do. She says he left without warning. She says he cut off contact. She says the judge already agreed with her. That last one was a lie. A measurable one. I wrote everything down. Names, dates, exact wording. I wasn't angry anymore. I was calm, cold, precise. The psychological evaluation came. Doctor. Henson was polite, professional, thorough. He asked about my childhood, my marriage, my anger levels. I answered honestly, didn't defend myself, didn't attack Allison. When he asked how I felt about losing parental authority, I said the truth. I feel grief, I said, and responsibility. Because if I walk away, a child loses someone who stays. He paused longer than usual, wrote something down. Good. That night, back in the VFW room, I laid everything out on the bed. Not just evidence, strategy. I saw the shape of it then. Allison wasn't just lying. She was overreaching, selling the house too fast, telling too many people too much, trying to erase me so completely she'd left fingerprints everywhere. She thought I was still reacting, still emotional, still scrambling. She had no idea I'd stopped playing checkers and started building a map. This wasn't about winning the next hearing. This was about ending her credibility. Piece by piece, the false defeat was over. I still looked like I was losing, still had supervised visits, still had rumors circling me like vultures. But inside, something fundamental had changed. I wasn't trying to be seen as a good man anymore. I was preparing to be undeniable. And for the first time since that night in the kitchen, since the word real had been thrown at me like a weapon, I felt something solid beneath my feet. Not hope. Control. I didn't confront Allison. I let her collapse under her own weight. That was the difference between anger and execution. The turning point didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened in a copy room at Emma's elementary school. Mrs. Callahan didn't mean to help me. She just made a mistake. I was standing there waiting for Eric when the counselor came out holding a stack of papers, her face tight, distracted. "Oh, Tom," she said. "I didn't realize you were here today." "I'm early," I replied. "Evaluation follow-up." She nodded, then hesitated. "I shouldn't say this," she said quietly, "but I think you should know. Allison asked us to document specific language Emma used. Phrases, exact words." I didn't react. "Do you remember which ones?" I asked. She swallowed. "Yes, because they weren't Emma's words. They were Allison's." That was the moment the entire structure cracked. Because courts don't forgive manipulation of a child's voice. They punish it. Eric moved fast after that. Subpoenas went out. School emails. Counselor notes. Drafts. What came back was worse than I expected. Allison had sent templates, bullet points, suggested wording for Emma's feelings. Daddy Danny chose work over me. I feel confused about who my father is. I feel pressure to call him dad. Same phrasing, same rhythm, different dates, different contexts. It was control, masquerading as concern, and judges hate that more than lies. The guardian ad litem, Donna Reese, came back for her second visit. This time, she didn't just observe. She asked Emma questions, not leading ones, open ones. Who helps you when you're scared? Who listens when you're upset? Who do you trust? Emma didn't hesitate. Daddy Danny, she said. Donna's pen stopped. And who told you he left because he didn't want to be your dad? Emma looked down. Mom. Silence filled the room. Donna closed her notebook. I've seen enough, she said quietly. The next hearing wasn't dramatic. It was surgical. Allison walked in confident, hair done, posture straight, attorney at her side, like armor. She smiled when she saw me. That smile faded when Donna Reese took the stand. I find, Donna said calmly, that the petitioner has repeatedly interfered with the child's independent emotional expression. Allison stiffened. Specifically, Donna continued, the petitioner supplied language, encouraged repetition, and corrected the child when spontaneous responses did not align with the petitioner's narrative. The courtroom was silent. Eric didn't interrupt, didn't grandstand. He let the record speak. Then he stood. Your Honor, he said, we move to admit Exhibits 14 through 22, emails, templates, highlighted phrases, Allison's handwriting in the margins. The judge adjusted her glasses. Miss Mercer, she said, voice flat. Do you deny authoring these communications? Allison's attorney leaned in, whispering urgently. Too late. No, Allison said sharply. I was trying to protect my daughter. The judge didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. From what? She asked. Allison opened her mouth, closed it. Nothing came out. The financial execution came next. Eric stood again. Your Honor, we'd like to address the petitioner's emergency withdrawal requests. The bank manager testified. Dates, amounts, denials. She attempted to remove the entirety of the joint funds. The manager said. When denied, she became verbally aggressive and claimed spousal abandonment. The judge turned a page. Feel 3 days after Mr. Mercer left on a documented work transfer. She noted. Allison's face flushed. That money was for Emma, she snapped. Eric nodded. Then why did the listing agent receive a deposit request? The real estate agent took the stand. Allison instructed us to list immediately. He said. She stated her husband was gone permanently and wouldn't contest. That was a lie, the judge said quietly. It wasn't a question. The final blow was the psychological evaluation. Dr. Henson testified neutrally. Mr. Mercer demonstrates consistent emotional regulation, stable attachment behavior, and appropriate parental boundaries. Then he paused. In contrast, the petitioner exhibits indicators of coercive narrative framing. Allison's attorney stood. Objection. Overruled. The judge said. I want to hear this. Doctor, Henson continued, this is not uncommon in high conflict custody cases. One parent seeks to control the child's perception to maintain dominance. Dominance. That word landed hard. Allison stared straight ahead. She knew this wasn't salvageable. The judge leaned forward. Her voice was calm, which was worse. This court finds that Mrs. Mercer engaged in deliberate misrepresentation, financial misconduct, and emotional manipulation. Allison shook her head. This is unbelievable, she muttered. Indeed, the judge replied. It is. She picked up her pen. Effective immediately. Primary physical custody is awarded to Mr. Mercer. Allison stood. You can't. Sit down, the judge said sharply. Allison froze. Mrs. Mercer, the judge continued. You will have supervised visitation pending further review. You are prohibited from relocating the child or liquidating marital assets. She looked at me then, really looked, for the first time. She wasn't angry. She was afraid. After the hearing, she followed me into the hallway. Daniel, she hissed. You think this makes you a hero? I stopped, turned. No, I said calmly. I think this makes me a father. Her lips trembled. You took everything from me. I shook my head. No, I just stopped you from taking everything from her. She had no answer for that. That evening, Emma stayed with me for the first time without supervision. She explored the house like she was reclaiming territory. Her room still smelled like crayons and dust. She placed the little wooden fox on the nightstand. You didn't leave me, she said matter-of-factly. No, I said. I didn't. She nodded, satisfied. Later, when she was asleep, I sat alone in the living room. The house quiet, but no longer empty. The execution wasn't loud. There were no cheers, no victory speech, just a slow, undeniable shift of power back to where it belonged. Truth doesn't need drama. It needs patience. They tell you victory feels loud. Cheers, relief, a rush. That's not true. Real victory is quiet. It settles in slowly, like dust after a collapse, when you finally see what's still standing. Allison didn't explode after the ruling. She didn't scream, didn't threaten appeals. She did something far more revealing. She disappeared. Her salon closed 2 months later, not abruptly, just quietly. A handwritten sign on the door about restructuring priorities. The Instagram post stopped. The curated happiness evaporated. People noticed. In small towns, silence is louder than scandal. The same women who once nodded sympathetically now crossed the street to avoid her. The same friends who had shared her stories suddenly remembered appointments they needed to keep. Truth has a way of making liars very lonely. The supervised visits didn't last long. Emma tolerated them, but she didn't lean in anymore. She answered politely, kept her hands in her lap, looked at the clock. Children know when something is over long before adults admit it. Donna Reese's final report was gentle but firm. The child demonstrates a secure attachment to Miss Mercer and signs of emotional regression following contact with the petitioner. The judge didn't need more. Supervision became optional, then infrequent, then unnecessary. Allison stopped asking, not because she'd healed, because she'd lost control. Emma came back to life in pieces, not all at once. The first thing that returned was her humming. She hummed while brushing her teeth, while drawing, while doing homework at the kitchen table. One night, I heard it from the hallway and had to lean against the doorframe until the feeling passed. You don't realize how much silence hurts until it leaves. We rebuilt slowly, not the house. I'd always been able to fix that. We rebuilt trust. Every night, I showed up. Every morning, I made breakfast. Every time she asked a question, I answered honestly but carefully. Why did mom lie? I didn't poison her with bitterness. Because sometimes adults are afraid of losing. I said, and fear makes people do things they shouldn't. She thought about that, then nodded. That was enough. Rick sent one more email 6 months later. Short, unadorned. I'm moving out of state. I won't interfere anymore. Take care of her. I didn't reply. Not out of anger, out of clarity. Some men don't deserve forgiveness or blame, just distance. On Emma's 11th birthday, we went to the winter festival downtown. Popcorn machine, ice sculptures, a small carousel that played teeny music. She dragged me toward everything. At one point, she stopped in front of a booth selling wooden toys. She picked up a little carved fox, same shape, same size. I like this one, she said. You already have one. I smiled. She shook her head. This one's for you. That night, after she went to bed, I sat by the living room window. Snow fell in slow, patient sheets. The town looked the same. Same streets, same lights, same quiet judgments. But I was different, not hardened. Clarified, revenge didn't come from shouting. It didn't come from humiliating Allison or taking pleasure in her unraveling. It came from restraint, from letting lies overextend themselves until they snapped under their own weight, from staying when walking away would have been easier, from choosing a child who didn't share my blood, but shared my life. People ask me sometimes if I regret leaving for Japan. I tell them the truth. No, because leaving wasn't abandonment. It was the first time I stopped letting someone erase me. The first time I chose dignity over permission. Emma asked me once, late at night, half asleep, "Daddy Danny, you're not going anywhere, right?" I pulled the blanket higher around her shoulders. "No," I said softly. "I'm right here." She sighed, peacefully, and in that moment, I understood something my father had never quite put into words. You don't become real by biology. You become real by staying, by standing still while storms rage around you, by letting truth speak, even when it whispers.